Thank you so much, Elsie, for that question. Look, I think there's quite a number of things that needs to be considered. It's a very critical time in terms of first oil, and getting to that point, I think, will require a lot of effort from quite a number of partners, stakeholders. So I think first and foremost, one needs to think about looking at a country like Guyana to take learnings from. I think they have discovered 2015 and they went to first oil in 2019. Now, in terms of oil and gas, that's world record time. They're also the fastest growing economy in the world. And I think, it takes a lot to get there. So there's quite a lot of learnings that one can take from them in terms of how they've managed to look at negotiating certain transactions, looking at their regulations that they had put in place, etc. And then with regards to going to first oil, I think a couple more other things to consider. So, oil and gas is a sector that we just, it's relatively very new. We've discovered it quite recently, and I do strongly believe that we may need advisors internationally to come to Namibia and help us navigate, I think, through various challenges, through various considerations to get to first oil. Secondly, what I also think we should consider doing is putting in relevant systems and processes that speaks to being able to handle a multi-operator and a multi-development type of a scenario, because that is where Namibia is currently. We are a multi-operator and a multi-development market, meaning that you're going to have a lot of operators within the environment doing exploration, hopefully moving into development and then production. And as a result, I think to make things a lot more efficient, we'll have to make sure that we've got the right processes and systems in place to negotiate, all sorts of transactions, to review technical, plans and development plans that will be put on the table, and make sure that things are commercially also making sense from all angles and aspects. I think those are some of the key items that we'll need to think about in ensuring that we come to first oil, I think, without delays, if I can call it as such, yeah. Well, I think Standard Bank has been around for quite some time. And as a result, we're also the biggest bank in Africa by assets. If you look at the energy sector on the African continent, there are, I think, more or less 20 or more markets that we are very actively involved in on the African continent, where we actually do bank a lot of the clients and we fund a lot of the clients on this within the sector on the continent. So as a result, I think there's quite a lot of expertise, experience that we can actually leverage off from and bring into Namibia, because we've done it all. It's done and tried and tested. We've got templates that we can come and replicate. But I mean, as you know, every country will have its nuances. So we'll have to see as to what we tweak to make it more relevant for Namibia when we do bring our expertise. In addition to that, obviously, there are also other considerations that we need to make around our strategy, where we need to make sure that, our balance sheet is aligned properly to what is about to come, making sure that we've got the right resources from a capital allocation perspective into the country as well. So I think with that aspect, I think there's quite a lot that Standard Bank can bring to the Namibian economy to make sure that it actually thrives. What I also would want to add finally is that, I mean, over the years, we've also been able to have the right type of engagements with the various governments across the continent, which we are also currently doing here in Namibia as well. Just making sure that we give the right advice to make sure that Namibia's energy sector will be at an optimal level as well. So from a local content perspective, our understanding is that currently it is at an advanced stage. I think there's still a few, considerations that need to be put in place, which is actually very, very good. So what is quite important is obviously to make sure that everybody is aligned, from the oil majors to the local players that will be participating, as well as the policymakers as well. looking at what those expectations are going to look like from all the parties and trying to see how do we, as industry players, meet each other in ensuring that we meet each other's expectations. So what we have seen is a lot of SME local players also partnering up with some of the international players to be able to learn more from them. And those are the type of sort of initiatives we would want to see more. The other point that I would have wanted to raise, which is also quite important, is also ensuring that when we go through the local content and implementing a lot of these policies that are going to be coming through, we may need to think about doing it in an escalator or some form of a phased approach. I mean, obviously, as you know, oil and gas is here to stay, hopefully for the next couple of generations. So we're talking for one single project, a 25-year to 30-year project. And we're going through stages of exploration, development, and then production. So obviously at those various stages, there are certain requirements that are going to have to be met. There are certain expectations that are going to have to be met. And at times, it even could take up to 10 years for local parties or local service providers to be able to have the right type of knowledge and skill set and experience to fully comply with certain requirements or certain standards from a quality perspective. So those are also some of the considerations that may need to be thought of, where we need to think about having a phased approach and making sure that some of these targets are met over period of time as the journey will move on and progressing for oil and gas. The first thing that we really have to look at as a country, Namibia will have to ensure that it will be self-sustainable from an energy consumption perspective. As we speak currently, Namibia is a net importer of energy, and depending on the year and the seasons of rain and so forth, we're talking about 60, 70, up to 80% that we need to import energy that we consume as a country. So I think that's the first scenario that we need to look at in saying as to how do we close this gap. But as things stand currently as well, I think with the discoveries that were made, considered to be, I think, the biggest from a sub-Saharan Africa perspective, it speaks around the potential that, there are hydrocarbons out there for Namibia, and Namibia as a whole can actually become a net exporter of energy, both oil and gas. But at the same time, when it comes to renewable energy resources, from my understanding, Namibia is actually in the top 5 when it comes to sun, solar, as well as wind. So that also creates the potential for Namibia to be a proper net exporter as well when it comes to energy. And the role that it can play, we've seen that within the region, we've had quite a lot of deficit when it comes to energy, especially from our neighboring countries as well. So the role that Namibia can play is to be obviously ultimately a net exporter, but at the same time, with the new discoveries and the resources that the country has got, it can actually serve as an example when Namibia can be used as a template in terms of how to prepare for these discoveries, how to prepare for what is about to come, and also to make sure that we set out forth the do's and don'ts very early enough. We make key decisions around policy very early enough that will ultimately benefit the country as a whole. So those are some of the things that we need to consider in making sure that the country can be used as an example, and obviously having the abundance of resources, just making sure that we've got the right policies and legislation in place that can attract investment as well. So at this stage, we are still in exploration. We haven't gotten into FID or development phase yet. And so some of the services that are required could be items such as your basic food stuff, transportation, lodging and accommodation. And these are some of the services that Namibians can actually perform. So yes, as we are in this exploration phase, it is a specialized area. You do get the likes of the Halliburtons, the Baker Hughes, that are now going to come into town, and they are going to be providing the biggest type of services as well as the engineering services. So what could actually be happening there is also seeing a lot more, I think, SMEs partnering up with these guys, so that they can, excuse me, obviously obtain the necessary skills, exposure and experience, which will ultimately help, I think, the local community and the local business fraternity. Um, in addition to that, what I want us to think about is also creating an environment where, over time, our local players also gain that experience and become specialized within the space and provide ultimately the services to the oil and gas majors as well. All right, so I think the one that is quite important is exploration. We are in exploration right now, but I think we need to continue with the exploration. That is very key because that is how you're going to create further more assets, further more opportunities, and increase, I think, the economic base of the country as well. So we need more exploration to take place. Um, and then I think the other point that I would have wanted to raise is just making decisions a lot more quicker, whether it is legislation related or any kind of decision that would enable our oil and gas majors to come through and move into FID phase and ultimately into production. And then the next point that I do believe, which is also quite critical, considering where we are as a country, being a net importer of energy, we need to talk about gas to power. Gas to power becomes very essential for the reasons that I've mentioned. But ultimately, with what we've seen with the discoveries is that there's also quite a lot of gas that is out there and that is available. In addition, we need to start thinking about also gas legislation that needs to be put in place, which will help drive the agenda around gas and energy use in country.